Not a single MVP vote. Very little MVP discussion. And the Seattle Seahawks need to understand he's just coming off his best season ever as a player. And if his mind is made up that this is about 20 years and the Russell Wilson brand, then they're going to have to seriously sit down and consider trading Russell Wilson.
Okay, so that seems to be very much on the table right now. And as we say, big city mayors have gotten involved. That's one quarterback situation. Let's get to the next of the day, and we'll begin it with today's required reading, which takes us to the Houston Chronicle. John McClain, who is a very well-known and respected columnist in Houston, wrote this about the Deshaun Watson situation over the weekend. He wrote, McNair, meaning the owner Cal McNair, knows they're a more attractive team with Watson than without him. But at some point, reality has to set in. If Watson is traded for multiple high draft choices and one of them is spent on a potential franchise quarterback, the Texans would be much more appealing than if Watson were sitting out, creating a colossal distraction with A.J. McCarron and Josh McCown as their top two quarterbacks. Talk about a tough sell. And for people who don't know that market, there was a lot of reaction over the weekend saying if McClain is writing that, that's a big deal. It feels like a big deal in that city. Kimberly Martin, let me start with you because you talked a lot this morning in our meeting about leverage. Where is the leverage as we speak between Deshaun Watson and the Texans?
Now, I'm not saying I feel this way, but when I talk to people around the league, their question is, what leverage does he have? He's under contract. He just signed the contract in September, the extension. So is Deshaun Watson willing to pay back, to lose over $20 million and give back part of his bonus to the Texans that he's already received? You know, and when you look at Deshaun, if he goes to another team that has to give up a king's ransom to get him, he'd be going to a team that likely has the cupboards bare. Except for one team. I think the Miami Dolphins are positioned where they can at least say, hey, we can get you, we can give you guys all this and get Deshaun and still be a competent, well-run team with a lot of pieces. I don't think a lot of other teams can say that.
All right, so Mike Tannenbaum, let's talk about that because the question is about leverage. What is the answer if you're in that seat where Nick Caserio is sitting, and you've been there twice as the GM of two different teams? What is the leverage?
Yeah, well, right now, I have a massive pit in my stomach if I'm Nick Caserio, because publicly I'm coming out saying, hey, we want to make sure but I'm really worried that he's going to miss games. So while you do have, because he's under contract, you're really scared to death. And let's put this in context, Greeny. We're in year one. Caserio, no free agent in their right mind is going to want to come to there until this situation is solidified. Has to go see Deshaun Watson to fix it. In the meantime, if I'm Nick Caserio, I'm not taking those calls yet, and I want Deshaun Watson to know that your best and really only option right now with the Texans, and not even go down that other road, because once that happens, you really do lose control of the situation.
Okay, clearly. And we'll try and get to obviously some issues with the hit there, but you could understand basically what he's saying, that there are issues on both sides of this. So, Dan, you have been steadfast all along in saying that Deshaun Watson has taken his last snap for the Houston Texans. So where does it go? How do we get from there to where we're going to wind up?
All right, four things. Deshaun Watson's leverage is his integrity, okay? The second thing is this. Nick Caserio, do your job. You come from New England, which is the famous saying, do your job. Your job as a new general manager, you were brought in to rebuild the Houston Texans, not just fix the relationship with Deshaun Watson. You're not going to do that, okay? The third thing is this. Deshaun Watson's not backtracking, guys. Deshaun Watson didn't get to March 1st, publicly say that he wanted an apology, or a trade, excuse me, sit down with the new head coach and tell him, I'm not playing for you, only to 5 months from now go, you know what, I was wrong. I'm going to play for you guys. He's dug in. And lastly, this move for Deshaun is not about 2021. This is a long-term move. Deshaun Watson is going to play for at least another 12 years in the NFL. You don't think he's willing to sit for 1 year to get out of an awful situation? Nick Caserio, do your job. Find a way to rebuild the Texans.
And quickly to Kimberly's point about the Dolphins, and we could see where the different leverage is, but to be clear, they have a whole lot of draft picks, and they have a young quarterback that they could put into this deal who was everybody's it guy just as recently as a year ago. So, Kimberly, you put Tua Tagovailoa in a deal and 2 ones and maybe a few other things, and maybe it is really a trade that benefits both sides. The Texans get the fresh start they're looking for, and Deshaun gets what he's looking for without going to a terrible team.
Yeah, and as Mike T is so famous for telling us, the tax situation in Florida, a little bit better than some other places. The weather, a little bit better than some other places. So, yeah, I think if you're the Dolphins, you're Brian Flores, you're Chris Greer, you're a black head coach, a black GM saying to a black quarterback in the NFL, hey, we want to bring you here. We've got pieces, even if we give up the draft capital. Hey, one of those picks actually came from the Texans. So, and we're gonna give up a QB for you. This team is built to at least be competitive and potentially very dangerous going forward, which is not something that a lot of these other teams can say.
Look, with Deshaun Watson on that team last year, they would at minimum have been in the playoffs, and who knows how good they would have been there. All right, we'll leave it there for the moment. There is so much.
You know, at least if you start over and you get a guy with a second pick overall, like Zach Wilson, or you take Tua Tagovailoa, at least you say, okay, this guy's going to be our franchise quarterback. We're starting over. They're rebuilding anyway, and I just hope some sanity returns to that organization, and these are the steps they take.
And, Key, you have said, to kind of echo what John said, it's time for the Texans to start listening, because as crazy as it sounds with Watson's talent, it could be a watering down of his value if things don't pick up here.
Well, I think what happens is these things are like, they run in cycles, right? If we go way back to when we talked to, oh, God, I can't think who it was. It might have been John McClain that was on with us. And he talked about the Texans not doing anything. And I kept saying, they better try to figure out what they want to do, because as time continues to tick and people start to hear his frustrations, they know, based on last Friday or 2 Fridays ago when he decided to go in and tell the Houston Texans and Coach Kelly, I'm done here. Now that's just the start of the devalue. That's just the start of it. Now, the longer you wait and we get closer to the draft, now everybody knows that you've got to do something at the quarterback spot. I mean, you're going to line up with Josh McCown? I mean, is that who you started the season with? I mean, so you start to see the pressure points. And now you run this all the way into April. Now teams know, instead of giving up 3 first-rounders and other picks, they can now try to bargain with you and give up 2 first-round picks. Yep. And now you're sitting there going, okay, and I've seen this movie before with teams that try to get cute. And they want to hold on to you and not realizing the best thing to do is he doesn't want to play for you. Don't try to force him to play. Get what you can, like John McClain says, and let's move on with, and I understand you don't want to set a precedent, Jay, and you don't want everybody to run into the building talking about, I want to be traded, and you have every single year a flux of guys coming to you saying they want to be traded. He's different, though. Certain guys are different, and he's different.
Damn, who wants to stay in Houston these days? James Harden got out. Deshaun Watson's getting out. Victor Oladipo didn't sign a 2-year extension last night. He turned that down. It's really crazy to watch all the way around. But I would say this, Key. I think there's a major advantage here for the Miami Dolphins and Brian Flores. I'll tell you why. Pictures of your starting quarterback out in Miami with our players hanging around, kicking it. He's comfortable down here, off-season home. We may have made an offer underneath the table, but we got somebody that he can be plugged in right away in Tua Tagovailoa. In your system, young quarterback, we have assets, but now I don't need to force a deal. Now I'm going to wait for you to come to me, knowing that your quarterback has a no trade clause, understanding that he feels very comfortable in the environment because he's publicly already put that out there.
No, Tua's there. There's no question about it, but I'm Houston. I don't like Tua. If I'm Coach Kelly, I don't like Tua. You trying to give me something I don't like.
Well, we don't know he doesn't like Tua.
No, but I'm
saying. Or do you know for a fact he doesn't like Tua?
No, I don't know for a fact, but I'm saying you just offering up Tua to me just because I need a quarterback. But I may not like Tua. I may like Sam Darnold better. You see what I'm saying? Or I may like a Derek Carr better or somebody out there other than Tua.
But also, you need to get it depends upon the best deal, right? So you need a ransom for this to a degree too. So I know you're saying losing value, but if you're saying that window is shrinking to negotiate, beggars really can't be choosers the longer this goes on, correct?
That is correct. They cannot. But I think what they got to really understand, I think early on they misjudged Deshaun. And they misjudged it by thinking that they could smooth things over, getting the general manager, Nick Caserio, to maybe try and talk to him, get Coach Cully. Oh, we hired a black head coach, so let's try to get him to go and communicate with him. We kind of sort of did some of the things that he wanted us to do, but not fully doing everything. You know how they go.
But
They came back around and decided to hire a black head coach. And I'm sure in that thought process of hiring him, they also thought, well,